Welcome to another episode of Tigers SRD here at MotorCityBengals.com and, of course, at my Tiger Management Report. I'm Rogelio Castillo, and Chris Brown. You can find us on iTunes, Spotify, iHeartMedia, and Stitcher. We're going to get to the show a little bit, but first things first, want to get to the most well-traveled, interesting person I've known, who, by the way, had to celebrate. I have to give you kudos because you're now part of a national championship. Congratulations.
Damn right.
Damn right. Damn right you're right. You should. I mean, that's something that I want you to have one of those. I hope you get one of those big gaudy rings that has like the E, like just the Orchard Lake or either the big either E or I know it's going to be like red rhinestones, right? Is that what the ring's going to be?
We just like not 2 days ago finalized the order for the rings, and like because now we were able to add national champions like around one side of it, like state champs on one side, national champs on the other. Like it's red with gold on the sides with like a dark background to the gold. Like I'll send you guys pictures, but yeah, very, very much looking forward to adding that to the collection. Yeah,
because every time you do an interview from now on, I just want you to just kind of go, yeah, I know it's crazy. Just somehow like find a way to flash it every time you see talk to people about it. Like,
there's a Philly scout down here. Like in the southern part of the U.S. I don't know his exact area, but anyways, like he rolls around with that World Series ring from 2008. Like that's, that is on his hand every time I've seen that dude. So I would do the same thing. I'm not like insulting him. I would do the exact same thing.
Yeah. I expect you to do that, but I just want you to be like, you know what? So did you win a state champ? I'm sorry. Are you a national champion?
I'm sorry.
There's a restaurant out by me, and we took you there, Raj, where the guy it's called Giannopolis, and I think the original one was in Farmington Hills. The guy who owns it has legit rings for the Pistons and the Red Wings. He got them because he fed the team or whatever, and he wears them all the time. I'm like, sure, man, if they want you to get one, then wear them.
Yeah,
they told you that was okay. Okay, rock it out.
Yeah, you should, man.
But
yeah, so Brian Sakowski is with us from Perfect Game. He's down in Georgia right now as hopefully you get some rest soon, buddy, as the draft is coming to a close on Sunday. I'm sure that you don't want to hear the word draft for a few weeks, but I appreciate you taking the time to join us this evening. So, but yeah, the terms we talked yesterday with Kylie McDaniel, ESPN Plus, but in terms of the local perspective, and there's a couple local guys we'll ask you about in a second, because I know you've been going to games in Adrian and all over Michigan, and so we'll get that in a second. But you're projected. Are you going to project Brady House at pick number 3 for the Tigers, or what do you think the Tigers are going to do up here?
Yeah, I mean, Chris and I have talked about this a fair bit. I think their board probably starts with Meyer. I don't know that with any certainty. Like, I have not seen what David Chad's draft board looks like. I don't want to give off that I have.
Right.
I think Meyer's probably first, and then I think Leiter is 2. But I would imagine that it feels like Leiter, House, and Job are all kind of similar for them. I don't know if I put it to you this way, guys. I would find it hard to believe if those 3 are on the board if Job is the pick. I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong. I might be wrong. I'm just saying that I'd be surprised if they took Jackson Job over House or Lawler or Leiter. I would imagine Job might be 4th for them. But yeah, I guess right now I would say, considering I don't know for sure who the Pirates or Rangers are going to take, I'm gonna say Brady House right now would be my projection.
In one of the questions I keep getting just on Twitter is people wondering, like, hey, how much are the Tigers going to save on House or Job? And I'm like,
maybe nothing.
Yeah, I'm kind of I don't. If anything, I would say like a couple $100,000, but probably not.
Yeah. What's the exact slot at 3? You guys are going to know that.
I think it's 7.2.
Yeah,
okay,
so
call it 7.2. Like they might sign a dude for 7.
Yeah.
There. It's not going to be, we took this high school guy, so now we have $3 million extra to play around with. No, these are the top high school guys in the class you're picking from. They're still going to get paid. So I don't know if there's anybody they'd have to go over that for necessarily. But like I said, man, 6.5 at the least, I think is what we're going to see here.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I guess let's talk a little bit about what the Tigers would be getting in these guys. We mentioned Meyer. We didn't talk to Kylie about Meyer because we didn't think he'd get there, but I'm kind of curious about your take on Meyer.
Left-handed bat with huge power projection. He's got field to hit. He's got now juice. He's long and lanky and not an explosive athlete, but he's a smooth athlete. And like the best way I can describe it to you, and this is, but common in scouting circles, like he's a SoCal infielder, man. Like it's smooth as hell, even if he's a 40 runner. Like that's just what SoCal infielders are. So I think there's a chance to play short in spite of that relative lack of athleticism compared to like 80 Twitch dudes. But either way, good third baseman who's got a chance to be plus hit, plus juice from the left side of the plate. And like, what else do you want?
Well, yeah, wait. I was trying to think. Who's the kid who was playing short for Ole Miss this year? I thought he was another one of those. Is it Gonzalez or something? I thought he was another.
Yeah, Jacob Gonzalez. Yeah.
Another SoCal infielder.
Yep. Give him till. He was a guy last year around this time that it was like, or before the draft rather. It was like, man, like I don't remember exactly, but it was something like he had a reasonable signing number, but it was still in seven figures, and no one wanted to reach it. And now, a year later, everyone's like, I wish we could have found that extra $200,000, or whatever it was.
There you go. Maybe the $200,000 the Tigers will get by.
Yeah, exactly.
Chop it off. So Meyer. Again, I don't think many people expect Meyer to be there at 3. That's kind of, I think, the ideal scenario for the Tigers. Maybe they get some luck. We could touch on Leiter. I think a lot of people know about Leiter, but I'm curious of your take on him.
Yeah, Leiter's a guy you and I talked about quite a bit already. I think it's 80 fastball quality when he's right. I think that the size concerns are alleviated by the fact that he's already so optimized to pitch with his size. He uses those traits of low release height and vertical slot like to his advantage. He pitches with 4-seamers at the top of the zone with plus spin and 100% spin efficiency. Like that's who that dude is. We talk about 4-seamers missing bats at the top of the strike zone. That is Jack Leiter. That is that. Good breaking ball, 2 of them. He's an ultra competitor. He's got the bloodlines, et cetera, et cetera. I don't think he's an ace. I don't think anybody's an ace in this class. We put it that way. But I think he's similar to kind of how I felt about Mize coming out. Like this is a dude who I think is a as safe bets go, a safe bet number 2 or number 3 starter. And if that's the guy, then that's the guy. That's a really valuable player if that's what he ends up being.
And the thing is that I know with I saw Henry Davis too at one point being top 5, what have you. But as in terms of a catcher, I know catcher's been going high the last couple of years, but is Henry Davis a top 10 pick?
Yeah, Henry Davis might go 1-1 still. Like I don't know, like that's a he might. I think there's a universe that exists where the Pirates are still shopping it around, like who's going to take the best deal, etc. So he could be one of those guys. But yeah, Davis did nothing but match this year. There's some who believe the catching is concerning, like the mechanic of him receiving and behind the plate. But if you're existing in a world where receiving doesn't matter because of automated strike zones, then who cares? Because he's like a 70 catch and throw guy and athletic. So with an 80 arm or 70 arm, I don't know whose is better though. So maybe 80. And then he just murders baseballs at 110 miles an hour at like 12 degrees of launch that get out of the park because that's how hard he hits him. His batted ball data is absurd. Like it's probably top of the class, if not the top of the class, batted ball data. But I don't know. Like the Tigers have Dingler, you don't draft against need, et cetera, et cetera. But like the Orioles aren't going to take him either because they have Rutschman, and that's not to say that that's a poor draft strategy, but I don't know. I don't think if the Tigers were picking at 8, we could talk about him. I don't think he's in play for them at 3.
I do want to ask you something that is considering that's going to probably go in effect for next year, and this affects in terms of players. The NCAA ruling now that players are allowed or athletes are allowed to make money. In terms of baseball, I mean, I know in baseball it's a little different where some of these guys come from families that have a little bit of money, but then you talk about guys who are on the fringe who could wait for the following year to make or get higher draw slots based off that. So how do you think that's going to impact the college game overall?
I think it's going to depend on like what the figures actually start coming back on as far as like what this NIL / potential monetization actually means in terms of dollars and cents. Like I would imagine that the best player at Ole Miss is probably going to be able to get paid, or like the Bobby Moore is probably going to make a ton of money at Arkansas, off of his likeness. But baseball is not the same. The SEC is the SEC.
Right.
Baseball, you guys know, being Michigan guys like I am, Michigan's packed house is 1,500, right? Like 1,500 is what like the LSU has show up for practice in August, So it's different. It's different across the board. It's not like football where if you look up north, it's like, okay, Michigan's its own brand. Michigan State's its own brand. Take your pick. Wisconsin's its own brand, etc. Ohio State, obviously. But in baseball, it's a little different than that. So I don't think anybody up north is going to be getting, like, super rich. But I think there's a chance the dudes in the South do, especially those places that are obsessed with college baseball.
Mississippi State.
Yeah, Arkansas don't have a pro team. Mississippi State doesn't have a pro team. This is that for them. Like, that's all the Tigers fandom and the passion, et cetera, like, apply that to being a Hail State fan. So there's something there. There's money to be made there, no doubt. I'm happy that athletes are able to access it.
Yeah, and one thing I'm kind of curious about now is how that. I mean, in baseball, college baseball, you get what, like 13 and a half scholarships or 11 and a third or something like that.
11.7, baby.
11.7. So what if David Price just goes, you know what? I want to endow 20 more scholarships for baseball players for Vanderbilt.
Well, Vanderbilt's already kind of working ahead of the curve because of the endowment, like the private school thing that they have going on there, where most of the time baseball players aren't paying anything anyways. But yeah, I think it's an interesting point of like, like who's a super like big time big leaguer who came from a mid-major school, a guy who made $100 million, like take your pick,
Chris Sale.
Chris Sale. What if Chris Sale goes back to FGCU and says, hey, I want to do this thing where I give, $100,000 a year in perpetuity, and that's covering 2 full scholarships or 1.6, whatever the hell the math works out to. Like, is that now a possibility? And if it is, boy, how can we weaponize it? You know what I mean? Like, I just, that'll be really cool. I think it's, you could hear the arguments for amateurism, but who gives a shit?
No, I think that I really do. I think that's all out the window now.
Who cares at all?
Yeah.
High school guys, I get, like, if you're under 18 or you're in high school still, like, et cetera, et cetera. I understand it, rules of amateurism, et cetera. I get the importance, but college guys, shit, man. I'd be like, if I was, you guys say the same things, but I'd be like, oh, you're gonna pay me $2,000 to do an appearance at a strip club?
Yeah.
Like, what time should I be there?
Well,
are you paying my bar tab too? Like, I'd be a terrible college athlete.
Who's it? There's the dude on Iowa basketball who's getting money for endorsing fireworks or whatever. Like, maybe somebody.
How much money do you want to pay me to say I eat this hot sauce? Okay, whatever. Yeah.
I mean, I could see something like for example, like Rice University. Rice is a big program in Houston, in that area. So you already have Jose Cruz down there taking over as a coach. So you don't think as a legacy, it's going to be like, well, wait a minute. I could tell you, and like you can get some more insight. But then in some cases where he can keep those players longer by somebody in Rice University, some whatever restaurant could be like, look, if you like our whatever food, I'm not going to try to stereotype, but like if you like our giant tacos, boom, here you go. There's ways to keep a program like Rice, who's kind of like in that mid-major program where they could be good if they had players to stay longer. But the reason why they lose players is because obviously they can't give them that money incentive. So
and Rice is hella expensive even on athletic aid. Yeah, and it's super academic. It's like that's a place that doesn't get enough. You hear like, oh, well, Duke can't recruit except for the high-end academics in Notre Dame and so on and so forth in baseball, especially Stanford. Like, Rice is kind of up there, like right up there. You have to have super grades to go to Rice. And it's in years past, it has fallen from the austere of the prime Wayne Graham years. And so that makes it even harder. Penn State, like that. Penn State's, that's a tough gig, man. Like, you got to have really good students to go there. And then, so you're trying to take the really good students in the general Northeast away from like Harvard.
Yeah.
I mean? Like, all right, like I could go play in a Power 5 or I could literally go to Harvard. Like most guys are going to choose Harvard. So it's just, any advantage we can give, any way we can level the playing field here, I think would be awesome.
Yeah, I was thinking of ways to bring it back to the draft a little bit. I was going to say,
and now we're back.
I was like, which Tennessee alum is going to give Brady House $10 million to take a school? But I
coaches there.
There you go. Yeah. But I'm curious. Brady House was famous when he was 14, 15 or whatever. So you've probably seen him. I don't know how many dozens of times in person.
Too many. Yeah.
Not
too many. You know what I mean. Yeah.
But so you've been there for the ups and then the down summer and then the bounce back or whatever. So I'm kind of curious about your perspective on all that.
Yeah, I've said this on podcasts before, and it may have been y'all's, and I apologize if I'm repeating myself, but so much of scouting, so much of baseball is you need to see guys fail, and then you need to see what happens from that. I don't ever stuff a dude who just hits home runs. You're he has the easiest time in the world. I need to see this dude get his ass chewed up by 94 with sliders in on the hands, and then what does he look like in the next at bat against that guy? That's so paramount to me over the dude who hit 3 home runs against the guy throwing 72. Mm-hmm. I just the failure part of it, because that's what Major League Baseball is. That's what every level of baseball is. We saw it with Akil Baddoo, especially this year. Is okay. The league adjusted, and he sucked for a month or however long it was, but then he responded to failure, and now he's their best player, maybe. Whatever. By WAR. But either way, the how you respond to failure, how you make adjustments from not only game to game, not only at bat to bat, from pitch to pitch. That's important. That I think says more to me than almost what your stats are sometimes. And House is a guy who did that. He responded to the failure of last summer. He had a tough summer. Part of that has to do with COVID. Part of that had to do with some family stuff, et cetera, et cetera. And then he came back on the fall and mashed. And then he mashed this spring. And he did it against good pitching in Georgia. He saw Dylan Lesko and hammered him. He saw Carter Holton. Take your pick. He saw Bubba Chandler, I think. But so his response to failure, he's younger. He's huge. He's got tools. I don't necessarily think his swing is the prettiest swing I've ever seen in my entire life, but I think the check marks are reached in the proper time allotted for those check marks to be reached. Yeah, man, I'm a big Brady House fan. He's been the biggest dude in the room for 3 years or whatever, and has not stagnated at all. And that's something you see. The 15-year-old kid who throws 90 but is 6'2", 200 already. He's probably not going to be real good in 4 years. House has been this the whole time. That uphill trajectory, like I said, responding to failure with tools, with upside. I don't know if he's probably not my favorite player in this class, but I feel like I almost have to take up the defense of Brady House, because so many people are well, he's a third baseman. I'm he's a 6'6" runner.
So all right, so that's okay. So that's what's interesting to me, because Kylie dropped a Bobby Witt Jr. comp on him last night. Yeah. He qualified it by saying, he said, Bobby Witt's a plus defender at shortstop. House might be average in the swing. But I was I looked at the PG and I'm well, House is a 7-1 runner here. But you're saying he's faster than that?
Yeah, he's a really good runner. I think he's been plus times down the line at times this spring. Not consistently there. He's not if you're writing it in the report using times down the line, he is not a 60 runner. Mm-hmm. He's probably a 50 runner, but it's just there's so much more athleticism to that dude than he gets credit for having, because he's a giant. Yeah. Because he's 6'3", 220 and built like a literal house. People I said this on the podcast with Dan Hasty the other day, people see big dudes and automatically move them to the corner. Mm-hmm. Carlos Correa still plays shortstop in the major leagues. It does not matter if you bang. If Brady House hits 280 with 30 pumps a year, he can play wherever the hell he wants.
Yeah, it makes sense.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So he's a third baseman. How do you know? I just get annoyed.
No, and I think that's the thing. People ask, and I say, yeah, maybe he'll move to third. Maybe maybe he'll get even bigger and move to right field or something like that. But you're not drafting him really for the glove. You're drafting him for the bat.
Yes.
I mean, the glove's nice, but
if you thought this dude was like at his very best, a fringy defender at third base with the rest of the offensive profile, he's still a first rounder.
Mm-hmm.
He's still a first rounder.
Yeah.
But if you think this dude has even a chance at being like an average defender at shortstop, that's why he's going to go in the top 3.
Yeah.
Like that's the separation there. So like the defense matters, but really he would still be a first rounder. Even if he was like, well, maybe he could fake it at third. Okay, first round.
Yeah. No, for sure.
But in terms of getting the local kids, I mean, outside of Alex Mooney, there's Spencer Swellenbach, the Big Ten Player of the Year in Nebraska. Is there any other local kids? Like last year, you and I we had a spirited discussion about Xavier Warren, who Milwaukee ended up drafting. This kind of central. Did I say Xavier Warren?
Yeah, Xavier Warren. You got it. Yeah.
Is there any other local products that may surprise you that or some people should know about that should be either in the first 5 rounds, but just like a sleeper Michigan person?
Yeah, the brain goes right to Mike Ottenbright, the Trenton High School kid who was a little light this spring. It wasn't in any way bad. It was just a little light. And then he went to the combine last week and was 91, 94 with like plus traits on the breaking ball and a good delivery and et cetera, et cetera. So I don't know. I'm not like sitting here saying he's going to go in the 5th round or something, but I think he's a name to keep an eye on. I think Steve Hajar from Michigan is probably going to go higher than people think. I saw him a couple times this spring and liked it neither time, but he's been better every other time, apparently. So, guys I trust, guys who would tell me if I'm being an idiot, et cetera, are like, hey, he's better than what you think he is. I'm like, okay. I just happen to see him bad. So I think he's a guy, he's not a Michigan native. He's from Massachusetts, but he goes to U of M.
Right.
Yeah, man, Schwellenbach, like you brought up, what a great kid. What a great story. He's an awesome human being. Really excited for him. So I think it'll end up being a race between he and Mooney. Who the first guy is drafted. It might be Schwellenbach at this point. We might be pulling ahead. But I think both of them will be like 30 to 40. Something like that. Somewhere in there if I had to break it down. But yeah, wait till next year.
Oh, yeah, well, that's what I was going to say about and you're not talking about just Orchard Lake St. Mary's, but
no.
You guys did lose. You didn't lose a ton. I mean, you're losing a potential, top 50 pick in Mooney, but there's a lot of juniors on that team that are talented. So
it was mostly juniors, honestly. Mostly juniors. So.
Yeah, I didn't know if we wanted to touch on Job at all, and we asked Kylie, but that's another. For a while there, it seemed like it was a done deal that it was going to be Job, but just kind of curious. You've seen him too.
Yeah, I never bought for a second, and this isn't me playing revisionist history. I'm wrong all the fucking time. Pardon my French. That's my bad, Raj. I'm sorry.
You're good.
Anyways, I never bought that Job was like, oh, this is the Tigers pick. This is the Tigers pick. I think he's within that range for them. Like I said earlier, I don't think there was ever a universe where they locked in on the high school righty at number 3. I just don't think that happened. It was popular to mock him there, but he still may go there. But anyways, Job, it's a good athlete. He's not overwhelming physically, but he has some projection to him yet. He's up to 97, 98 with the fastball. Probably needs to make a little adjustment in fastball shape long term. But the spin profile is absurd. Slider and curveball both well over 3,000 RPM. The slider's a 7. It really is. It might be an 8 long term. I'm not saying he's going to have the best slider in baseball, but I've never seen a high school guy who had that upside before, and he does. Curveball he added is good. Changeup he added is good. He threw a lot of strikes this spring. He always has. It's high school righties, high school pitchers are as risky as humanly possible, and so there's no saying this is the guy. There's a slam dunk. There is no slam dunk. There is no for sure. But man, he's talented. He sure is talented.
Yeah. I mean, the more that we talk to guys, it does seem like, you understand why he's mentioned there in the top 5. And
he's absurdly good. It's not like Jackson Jobe is the reason why he shouldn't go in the top 5. It's high school righties.
Yeah.
Know what I mean? Yeah. The same reason Mick Abel didn't go like until 15 last year. Mick Abel was not the 15th most talented player in the draft. You know,
and I've seen him sitting upper 90s this year down in the. It's like, all right.
Yeah, but like sometimes it looks fantastic like that. You still don't know what's going to happen with Mick Abel in the next 4. You know, so there's so much risk there, and when it hits, it hits. When it hits, it hits. But there's way more misses than hits when it comes to high school pitchers early on.
Yeah, that's unfortunate. It's something that the Tigers have dipped into, and we've seen it in person. Really, I mean, we saw with Bo Burrows and Matt Manning hasn't been quite what people had hoped yet. And there's still plenty of time, but so yeah, I didn't know if we wanted to touch more on who the Tigers might go over there with 32 or 39, or if you got to get running.
No, we got like as long as we wwap it up about 10, I'll be good.
Yeah, just just really that the 32,
no
39, that second pick.
Well, I want him to take Mooney. So
I do too. Yeah.
A lot of people do.
In the Prospects Live mock, I did Tyler Black at 32 and Mooney at 39. I don't, and that was with me taking Leiter at 3. So I think with Brady House, I don't know if you're doubling up on prep shortstop at 32 or 39. But at the same time, why not if he's your top player at that point?
Yeah.
Not everybody plays shortstop. So I think that there is the opportunity for them to, with 2 of those first 3 picks, if you want to double up on prep bats, this is probably the year to do that. Considering the dearth of college bats, considering the relative dearth of even impact arms, high school wise, that in that range. So I think ideally for me, it'd be like prep bet at 3, falling prep bet at 39. Whichever college arm fell to 32. And that might be Ryan Cusick. That might be Sam Bachman at this point, depending on how you feel about medicals. I'm not David Chad. I'm not in the draft room. I don't know exactly how it's going to go, but I think that like you have an opportunity here to swing for the fences with some prep bats because that's the strength of the class. And then at the same time, at 32 specifically, like that's basically the last pick of the first round or whatever, right? So you can sit there and be like, okay, well, which college arm fell because teams ahead of us are dumb, and then take that guy. So whoever that is, maybe it's Gunnar Hoagland. Maybe Gunnar Hoagland falls that far because he's hurt. Take him.
Oh God,
If the medical checks out, take him. Pay him whatever. Like he ain't going back to school, so Jaden Hill, one of those guys. Whatever you want.
Yeah, and I think that's. To me, that seems like the most likely scenario that you mentioned there, where because 39 is then the next day, you've got time to go and check with advisors and say, hey, what are you guys what's take? What's Bid Caderna going to take?
Yeah. Or whoever we have ranked at 21 who fell, like whoever it is, there's going to be someone weird, like why is Josh Baez still on the board here, guys? Something like that.
Yeah.
I think you can do some loud shit with these picks in this draft in particular, but that's still high school guys, you never know, so it's going to be risky whatever they do, but you could swing for the upside fence here for sure.
And the one last question for you, Brian, is in terms of do the Tigers, or even for that matter certain teams, like last year was a shortened draft, obviously Tigers couldn't go to their normal SEC power pitcher, we talked about this yesterday too, but do you see teams going back into their kind of old ways? Because I mean the Tigers last year were kind of unconventional in a sense. I mean Colt Keefe was something like Chris and I were talking about that. Like that seemed un-Tiger-like, and then actually with Dingler too, because that seemed like they took advantage of his where he dropped in the draft.
Yep, and I thought they did the same thing with Daniel Cabrera. It just
and Gage Workman.
Yeah, last year was very much like it felt like they weren't messing around. It felt like they weren't trying to outsmart anybody. They were just like, oh, well, we have this dude graded out way ahead of this pick that we're at right now. I guess we'll just take this guy and not even think about it. And I think they can do that here. And you'll find out a lot about what the new player dev kind of philosophies are based on, I think, how they approach this draft. Outside of 3, because that high it becomes just like, who's the best? I don't care what our player dev is. But once you get to 32 and 39, I think who they take, especially if it's high school guys, will tell you a little bit about like directionality they're moving in terms of player dev in the minors. Like which traits does this guy have Like what are this dude's strengths? Okay, then I think we can reasonably draw the line of like, all right, well, that's something the Tigers think they can either A, maximize those things, B, get the weaknesses better, or like C, all the above. But either way, whoever they take, I think will, like, oh, okay, the Tigers like this profile now, or like that profile. You know what I'm trying to say?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sure. All right. Well, I know you're on the road, and again, Brian, thanks so much for taking the time. And,
Always.
When are you coming back?
Who's to say? Who's to say?
Well, you're there watching a bunch of what 22s, 23s, 24s, all that.
22s right
22s?
now. Yeah, we're
get ready for next year.
We're spending this week. This is the first time I've ever had to do this because it's the first time the draft has been in July. But I'm like trying real hard to finish the 21 draft while at the same time starting 22 down here, and it's like, I catch myself getting confused sometimes. Like, man, I love that guy. Where's he going to go in 3 days? Wait,
yeah,
hold on. Yeah,
yeah.
We got a year and 3 days to worry about it. Okay, yeah.
Yeah, this is very randomly. I know you got to go, but I caught myself with that with what's the kid, the third baseman from Mississippi State, Cameron James. Is that his name?
Yeah. Cameron James.
I thought he was a draft kid next year. I didn't see him on any. He's not on Pipeline. He's not on Baseball America's list. But then I've seen him on like top 200 other lists. I'm like, what's the deal? Is this kid draftable or not? I don't know. So
yeah, he's draft eligible. He was actually pretty high up boards this year heading in because he was going to start at short, and then he did start at short, and it didn't go super well.
Oh, there you go. So,
yeah, that's why he's now.
I was just curious. Yeah. So, anyway.
Yeah, man.
All right, safe travels, my friend, and we'll talk to you soon, Brian.
Thank you, gentlemen. I appreciate it as always.
We'll see you.
Have a good night, man. All right, Brian Sakowski, road warrior, man. That's just for all the traveling he's doing. Man, he's literally living out of a suitcase, and
it's basically a scout's life,
Yeah, and he lives like not like a half a mile from me. We still haven't formally met. I mean, we've talked 3 years in a row. We've talked for 3 years, and his schedule and my schedule never meet up. And so, but yeah, I mean, from one CUIO, great Sacred Heart, to St. Sebastian's, which no longer exists. That's my school. It's good to see. But yeah, so we're getting right into the normal thing of things. Uper is still up north, so he'll be back with us, I believe, next week. And we have the draft show coming up on Sunday. So we have the Twitter chat that you can join us at Tiger Mind Report at the, what was it called? The Twitter
Spaces, I believe. Yeah.
Spaces. And so you can join us there at 3:00. And at 7, we're going to have a action-packed draft show. We're going to have a ton of guests too. So
wasn't Twitter Spaces Rod Stewart's first band?
Oh, there you go. That's nice. That's I did not expect you to pull out a Rod Stewart reference there. Well played.
Hey, this is Rod.
Yeah, this is Rod. This is what I sound like. So I hope to hear from you. Take care. Any Drew and Mike fans would recognize that drop. Yeah. But Tigers right now are seeing Tarek Skubal, just who the Twins have been notoriously been hammering lefties all year, and right now, Chris, it looks like he didn't give up a hit until the 5th inning. Then he gave up a homer. I think somebody just got a second hit or a third hit. But yeah, Tigers are up 3-1. Eric Haas with a 2-run homer, and then Zach Short with a bases loaded walk. So it's kind of funny. I think Short has 2 strikeouts and a walk, and a couple of good defensive plays. But yeah, keeping an eye on that. You've been keeping an eye on the minors. Erie was rained out today, but you did get video of Gage Workman's first high A home run, which is pretty cool. It was about 6 inches off the ground and a foot inside, and he still took it out. Yeah, it looked like a golf shot. He kind of just did one of those, like, kind of like a swing. It's just like,
yeah,
it in there.
It's impressive to be able to. I mean, obviously, you don't necessarily want him swinging at that pitch, but if you're going to knock it over the wall, then who cares? So that's right. Kind of cool. But
yeah, and it does suck that Erie's canceled again. The rain's been playing havoc across the whole Northeast, but they were playing a very good Somerset team that has some. The Yankees have some really good prospects in AA right now.
Yeah,
and they're one of the best offenses in AA Northeast right now. So the Seawolves definitely got their hands full. And West Michigan right now also playing one of the best teams in High A in Dayton, the Reds affiliate, and they were trailing 6-5, I believe, or something like that to that effect.
They were trailing 6-0 after 1 inning, and it's now tied at 7. So
wow. That's okay. All right. Well, yeah. When we started talking to Brian, I kind of lost what was going on there. But
Toledo up 8-0, and Lakeland tied at 4. So interesting. Yeah, this is all won't matter tomorrow, but whatever.
Yeah. No, it's all. What I've been finding interesting about for terms of the minor leagues this evening too, or the home run power. I mean, yesterday Spencer Torkelson hit another home run, and that was a blast. And that is also, I mean, like with the pitching, and we'll talk about the Tigers pitching in a second, because it's important to remember that we did see this week that Spencer Turnbull, it's going to be on a 60-day DL, possibly not come back till late August. And Chris, this is a big blow for fans who wanted him traded, but also at the same time, just for the rotation period.
Yeah, I mean, he threw a no-hitter. He was their best pitcher when he got hurt. He was looked like he was taking that next step, and unfortunately, this has kind of been the story with him for most of his career, where he's never been able to complete. I think maybe he did in 2015 complete a full season without getting injured. And this one it seems to be one of the more serious ones. It's a forearm issue. You obviously don't want to mess around with that. But yeah, it definitely stinks because, like I said, he was a guy, one of their younger arms, not necessarily young, but you put him there with Mize and Scoopel and add Manning in later, and it's a pretty interesting young rotation. And as you said, or maybe they just trade him, but all that's off the table now. And if he's coming back in August, I wonder if he's coming back at all, really. I mean, you're really going to bring him back in September just to, I suppose you want to get his feet wet again, but why push it?
Yeah, and that's where I kind of, if the Tigers at that point, depending on where they are at contention-wise, to even look, unless the Tigers are in the wild card contention, and I'm being very super optimistic when I say that, I don't think you should risk anything else to him. If the Tigers are out of it at that point, might as well rest him for next year. Again, I'm not trying to be a Debbie Downer about the whole situation, but at the same token, if you have him under club control for that long, why not just have him ready for next year when the Tigers could add a couple pieces in the offseason and strengthen your rotation?
Yeah, I mean, the main thing, I guess, would be to just get them a couple more innings so you're not ramping them up a ton next year. But still, yeah, I don't know. It's going to be something they're going to have to juggle. We've already seen AJ Hinch start juggling the rotation a little bit with Mize and his shortened starts, and I think they said they're going to start doing that with Scoobel after the All-Star break. So it's gonna be tough to manage this. You got Jose Urena with an ERA like over 9 in his last 10 starts or something like that. It's been pretty bad. So
that's where, I mean, and that's what I was. And before we get to the inside numbers in our regular segments, Chris, in terms of news, you look at going into the All-Star break. There's news that Jose Altuve will not be. He's not going to be playing. So maybe you put Jonathan Scope in there, or maybe I'll kill do. That'd be nice too. But the Tigers right now, you're in this position. You're 40 and 47. Cleveland's been on a free for all, but White Sox are getting stronger again. They're getting Makata back here shortly. You're still at the top of the division.
They cut Adam Eaton.
Yeah, they cut Adam Eaton. So they're going for it, and they're going to probably make a move here in the next couple of weeks. But if you're the Tigers right now, you look down in AAA. You have Drew Hutchison, you have Ricardo Pinto, you have a bunch of guys that are just stockpile of 4A arms. I think if you can make a trade that will allow you to get a starting pitcher that can at least get you through September or October, rather, to the end of the season, that just gives you 50 to 60 innings and goes out there and it's just a guy. I mean, like everybody's like, well, sign Rick Porcello. If Rick Porcello wanted to play, he would have signed already. Mm-hmm. That logic is like, well, don't you sign Rick? I know Anibal Sanchez is still out there, but if these guys were good, especially with all the injuries across baseball, they would have been signed already, folks. Not that just come on. I mean, I hate just don't make any trades. Don't do that because I understand that, but look closely at what you have in AA and AAA right now. Look at it objectively. There is nothing. Okay, I mean, if you're gonna tell me that, I mean, Willie Peralta, I expected something because he was throwing 95. We had reports from people that he was doing really well as he was ramping up again. I'm not hearing that about Drew Hutchinson. I'm not hearing that about anybody else. All they have right now is, they like Jesus, Angel de Jesus and what have you. But look at all you need to do is look at Erie's rotation right now. Joey Wentz is just coming back. and they're not gonna rush him. They're not gonna rush him if they don't have to. They have to if they want to. I think if you put Arena in the bullpen, like originally we suggested way back in the beginning of the year, that'll go a long way, Chris. But that's just me. I don't know. Maybe I'm talking too much crap.
Yeah, well, no, I mean it's they got to find innings somewhere. I mean you saw the other night. Urania clearly didn't seem to have it again, and Hinch just left him out there because they needed somebody to eat the innings. But yeah, I don't know. I'm really curious to see how they manage this down the stretch. It's things could get kind of wacky in August and in September. So I don't know. We'll see. Hopefully, Matt Manning. They did some work with his slider, and they altered it, but you still didn't get the results there, and I don't know if we're gonna. So, but at a certain point, the results be damned. You just need guys to take innings. So
yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's just Manning is on a strict learning curve right now. But I mean, at the same time, if everybody was healthy, wouldn't be in this situation. Manning wouldn't be here, and you can't tell me otherwise. I mean, there's just to me, he's got a ways to go, but they're going to be shortening innings here, and the All-Star break comes kind of really at the right time, Chris.
Oh, absolutely. This is they definitely need the break. Like we said, we'd kind of like to see Badu or Scope or somebody else in the All-Star game, just because I always make fun of people who are super into getting the players they see every day at the All-Star game. Like, why do you want to see that guy? You see him all the time, but it is a nice reward, and sometimes you want to see your local guys nationally recognized. I think Jake wrote an article about that. Like, hey, this is not getting nearly enough national recognition. So
give them his Badu.
Exactly.
No, and you're absolutely and Chris, even if you take away the objectivity of us doing a Tigers podcast, look what Badu's doing coming up from a low A level. It's not high A, it's a low A, and he missed the season because of an elbow injury, right? It was Tommy John? I can't remember.
He had Tommy John, yeah, same thing.
John, okay. Yeah, elbow. But it's one of those things where, for what he's doing, is pretty impressive. And teams, I don't know, it's going to be, especially with the outfield. I understand why in the American League the outfield's been pretty stacked. Even the gentleman from Baltimore, Cedric
Mullins, yeah,
Cedric Mullins not getting amazing season. He's not even getting enough love. And we saw the Cuban outfielder from the Rangers this week, and the Tigers kind of held him in check. Yeah, I think the Tigers held him in check a little bit. It was Gallo.
Yeah, well, he homered off Garcia, I think, but then I think everybody did, unfortunately.
Yeah, Brian Garcia is back down in Toledo.
It was a very rough series for him. When he gave up 4 home runs in 2 games, something like that. It's just, that's tough. But anyway, yeah.
If you're not missing bats, man, like I said, we talked about this last year. At some point, if you don't get that strikeout rate up, it's going to come back and haunt you. So
it's time for Rogelio and Chris to go inside the numbers.
All right, Chris, it's now time for Inside the Numbers. What is your Inside the Number this week?
So my Inside the Number is 421 and 7. So the 421 is Shohei Ohtani's isolated power so far this year. If he goes, just to remind everybody, isolated power is basically slugging percentage with batting average stripped out. You take away the singles. So he has 32 home runs, 4 triples, and 18 doubles in 290 at bats over 84 games. It's absolutely crazy. I know people are going nuts for Ohtani. It still doesn't feel like he's getting enough attention. But like I say, if he stays healthy, he's almost certain to hit 50 home runs at this rate, and he might even get 60, which is rarefied air. But that extra base thing, he has 54 right now. He's not going to get the record, which is 119 by Babe Ruth in 1921, which is insane. But he's got an outside shot of being just the 13th player ever to get 100 extra base hits in a season. And that hasn't happened since 4 guys did it in 2001. Kind of odd that 4 people did it in 1 year. I wonder what happened in 2001. But yeah, it was Barry Bonds, Todd Helton, Sammy Sosa, and Luis Gonzalez. Helton also did it in 2000, and then Albert Bell did it in 1995 in 143 games, which is insane. But before that, it hadn't happened since Stan Musial did it in 1948. So you're talking like a 50-year gap, and then like five guys did it, or it would happen 5 times in a 2-year span, and then not since then. The closest since then Chris Davis, that year he hit 50-plus home runs. He had 96 extra base hits in 2013. So, in any event, that's kind of remarkable. And the 7 is where Ohtani's ISO power, that 421, would rank all time if he can maintain it for the rest of the season. The 7th most isolated power in any one season, behind 3 Barry Bonds seasons, 2 Babe Ruth seasons, and Mark McGwire's 70 home run season. Just absolutely historic stuff from Shohei Ohtani.
Yeah, and you're right. I think there's this almost fever where he's not getting enough credit. I know that Ryan Kenny said something really kind of stupid about like his progress and the whole Babe Ruth comparison. Like one person's like, "Quick compare to Babe Ruth," and then somebody pointed out an old tweet that they did compare to Babe Ruth, and just enjoy. Like, I don't know why we can't have nice things in baseball.
No, I mean, he's clearly much better than Babe Ruth, but whatever.
Yeah.
I don't remember Babe Ruth throwing 100 miles an hour with the most unhittable splitter in baseball, but whatever. Yeah.
Did Babe Ruth have to face guys with curveballs that drop through 2 to 3 inches? I don't think so. Just saying. But my inside the number is the number 1, and that is the one, and that is the number of pitches that it took Pablo Lopez to get thrown out last July on his last start against the Braves, where he hit. There's this weird like blood thing rivalry between the Braves and the Marlins, and the first pitch was he hit Ronald Acuna Jr., and that was something last year that in ties with the Tigers, Jose Urena did, and it caused this big controversy, of course. But it was the Marlins bullpen recovery that they allowed. The other number I have in there is 2 hits. The bullpen went the rest of the way, and they only allowed just 2 hits, and that one walk led to the Braves' only run, and the Braves won 1-0. So Lopez got the loss after 1 pitch. So 1 run, 1 pitch. So that's something that is kind of unique. But I watched that game, and it was a total accident pitch. He threw him inside, and that's what Lopez. You can saw it. Lopez was like, man. But then the Braves manager's like, hey, he did it on purpose. And Don Manley came out and was like, look, this happens. But then with the weird history between those two franchises recently with Acuna, then I understand why. But still, I mean, props to the Marlins for at least rallying up like that. Anthony Bender, 2 innings, and he struck out every batter he faced. Struck out 6. Wow. So, I mean, that was some bang-up patch-up work, but it was Ross DeWittler who went 3 innings just allowing the 1 hit, 1 strikeout. And, yeah, to me, that's just one of those things where next man up kind of thing. But still, that was such a weird incident. But I really don't think he did it on purpose.
Yeah, it's like you said, when there's that history there, you can't really make a mistake. I remember when Nate Robertson, I think, got thrown out in the first pitch of a game or second pitch of a game. That was many, many years ago, but you had to know something was brewing there.
Yeah, definitely. And it was just, like I said, the umpire made no bones about it. So, but yeah, in terms of even like the Marlins it was a kind of a setback for them as they've fallen back in the rankings a little bit, but still the NL is such a brutal division. Just the way that those two, the entire division is just like eat each other alive kind of thing. So, but all right, now it's time.
The good.
Oh, that's good.
The bad.
Oh, that's bad.
And the ugly.
All right, Chris, it's time for the good and the bad, the ugly.
Hey, we got Ward Vango said great interview, so thank you, Ward Vango.
Thank you, Ward Vango. Much appreciated.
Lord Vader. So good, bad, and ugly. All right, let's start. Normally I do my inside the number about a Tiger, but today my good is about a Tiger, sort of. It's Spencer Torkelson. You touched on it earlier. He had a home run. Now we've been as wary as anybody about Torkelson, I think, here on the Tigers minor league report, because we got a terrible look at him in West Michigan. He was not good when we saw him, and it continued what we had seen kind of in spring training on TV and what others had seen in the extended spring training. But right now it seems like he's figured out minor league baseball, at least A-ball and AA. The moment right now he's hitting 297, 418, 577. That's an ISO of 224, an OPS of 995, almost to the rarefied 1,000 point, and a WRC plus of 165, which is 20th in minor league baseball right now. And not all those guys are prospects. There's a Jacob Robson's like 5th. Torkelson's walking at a 16% rate right now, and his strikeout rate is under 20%, which is pretty sweet. And I think he's probably ready to go to AAA. I suspect the Tigers want to keep him and Green and Dingler together, but he may force their hand eventually if he goes on a run like he did there in West Michigan. If he does that in Erie, like what else are you going to do? You're not going to let him hit like 400, are you? So, but I was kind of curious. Remember one of the names we heard a lot when Tork was drafted, him being compared to was Chris Bryant. And so I went back and I was like, what did Chris Bryant do in his first full season in the minors? So it would have been 2014. And he hit 323, 432, 655 between AA and AAA. So that was an ISO of 332 and an OPS of 1,087 and a WRC plus of 188. So significantly more power for Bryant, and he had a better average. His walk rate was about the same, but his strikeout rate was 28%, 27%. So I don't know. Tork is managing the zone better, so you do wonder if he's just going to start going crazy soon, or maybe he'll just continue to hit 300 with a good amount of power instead of obscene power like Chris Bryant did.
Yeah, there's been this thing on Twitter about when he's going to go to Toledo, but the answer is, what's the purpose of going to Toledo?
Yeah.
I'm sorry, not to be a snob about it, but they want to keep everybody together, correct?
No, well, I mean that's what we assume, but it is one of like I was saying, if he starts going absolutely nuts like he had done down in West Michigan, then you kind of have to send him to Toledo because it's what's he learning in Erie? The only issue there though is if he starts going nuts in Toledo, then what do? You just leave him there, I guess. But I think that they want to keep that core together like they did last year with Mize. I guess 2 years ago with Mize and Scooble and Manning, Fido, and all those dudes down in AA. They kept them in Erie, just, get a feel for a pennant chase, for playing with other guys who you're going to be on the majors with. So, yeah, I don't expect it to happen. I was just saying if he goes nuts, they might have to. But speaking of Chris Bryant, my bad is the Chicago Cubs, who Chris Bryant might be available soon. The Cubs are just 10-17 in the last 30 days and 13-21 since the start of June. By comparison, the Tigers are 16-12 in their last 30 days and 18-15 since the start of June. So 8 games better. I guess 7 games better than the Cubs since the beginning of June. And I look right now, and the Cubs are down 4-0 to the Phillies. So it continues. So what's wrong with the Cubs? Plenty. What do we got there?
Just wait for it. Keep talking.
So Jake Arrieta has an 8.86 ERA over the last month. Adbert Alzolay, who I believe is pitching tonight, has been really bad. His ERA is 6.14. The bullpen hasn't been great. Craig Kimbrell's still awesome, but Tommy Nance is their pitcher with the most innings of any reliever this month, and his ERA is north of 8. The biggest issue seems to be with the offense. They still have, Javier Baez is.
Go. Sorry, go ahead, Chris.
Like Baez is still doing well, but they have 5 regulars with a WRC plus under 60, so 40% worse than average over the last month, including Bryant, Ian Happ, Jake Marisnick, Eric Sogard. They're not all playing every day, but guys who are getting a lot of playing time. And of course, Sergio Alcantara. Rough one out there on the north side.
Oh, Sergio Alcantara. He's going to burn back the Tigers, said one anonymous guy that works in 97 with the ticket.
Oh, shoot. Scooble just gave up a game-tying homer in the 7th. So it's now 3-3. The Tigers have blown a lot of opportunities to score, and it's going to come back and cost Scooble the win, probably. Maybe even get them lost. But we'll stay in the National League Central for my ugly, and it's the Cincinnati Reds defense. So right now the Reds rank dead last in StatCast's outs above average ranking at -29. That's 6 runs worse than the next club, the Angels. And the Tigers, by the way, are 25th at -19. And this isn't a perfect 1-to-1, but generally speaking, losing runs like that, you equate 10 runs to a loss. So that's 3 losses just based on their bad defense alone. So the big culprits, their shortstop Kyle Farmer has actually been good. He's +4, but that's it. Joey Votto is a 0, which that works. Tyler Naquin -2 in center field. Jesse Winker -4 in left field. Nick Castellanos -5 in right field. We're familiar with that. Jonathan India is a -8 at second base. I think he's played elsewhere. And the biggest defender, of course, is Eugenio Suarez at -14 at third base and also a lot of shortstop. And Suarez by himself is worse than 23 whole teams. So that to me is ugly. Very, very ugly.
Oh my God. That's just, I heard that his defense was bad, but I didn't think it was that bad. Man, that's just, it's insane. And the Reds are still what? The Reds are still in the NL Central race, aren't they?
I think, yeah. I think the Milwaukee Brewers are really starting to pull away. Let me check the standings here. The Reds are 4.5 back in the wild card standings. In the division, they're in second, but they're 6 games back of the Brewers. So they're still within shouting distance, but it's getting late early.
Yeah. By the way, I mean, this should be part of the trade for Willie Adames is probably one of the best trades that the Brewers have made in a long time. That guy's been money and again, capitalizing on the right moment. So my good, and it's somebody that let me ask you a question, Chris, without you looking, just quick response. Who do you think leads the National League in WAR?
Fernando Tatis Jr.?
You would be incorrect. It would be one, Zach Wheeler. For pitcher. I'm sorry. For pitchers. I'm sorry. Zach Wheeler leads the National League in WAR with a 4.8. 4.8 WAR. And everybody talks about, those numbers, and every time he's out there, he does magic, which is perfectly acceptable. The DeGrom deserves it. But Wheeler is already throwing 117 innings already. I mean, Philadelphia's bullpen is that bad to the point where they have to bring him out there. But he's got a 4. That's something that you should hang your hat on, because Phillies needed him to stay in contention. So, but yeah, that's just blows my mind. Absolutely blows my mind that he's already at a 4.8 WAR and heading into the All-Star break. So, again, one of those things where he's a former Met too. So, imagine the Mets rotation with him now.
Well, yeah, and they had Syndergaard and Matt Harvey, and that goes to show you what you can do with a bunch of good pitching. Sometimes a lot, sometimes.
That's why you can never have enough pitching. Honestly, that's just drafting, signing, whatever you need to do. You need to have enough pitching. So, my bad this week is my bad really is just simply put, the way the whole Trevor Bauer situation, like we talked about that, it's just, the Dodgers have decided now not to even, they had a promotional bobblehead day. They're pulling that.
I would hope so.
Yeah.
I saw a bunch of his teammates unfollowed him on Instagram or whatever.
Oh yeah. So that's just getting bad. That's just nuclear bad. And I'm not feeling bad for him whatsoever, but it's just getting the situation for Trevor Bauer as whatever is going on is far worse than what we've seen in public. And so, yeah, it's insane to me that it's good that the Dodgers are taking the right steps. But again, the whole David Roberts comment from last week about that kind of sidestepping responsibility was kind of, I don't know, it was ugly. But the Dodgers are doing what they're supposed to be doing. So good for that. And there's no more excuses being made. It was just they're involving themselves in the situation. And my ugly this week, and it was also Cubs related. Or it was Cubs related, but I switched up a little bit because I didn't want to sound redundant. So this one's kind of on the fly, but is the Arizona Diamondbacks. And we've talked about them numerous times in the last couple of weeks, but the reason why they're bad right now, it's number 30. They're 30 games out of first place, Chris. This is okay, we've witnessed a lot of bad Tigers teams. And I remember some Tiger teams in the 90s were 19, 20 games back about the same time. The 96 or the 99 Tigers, like those late 90 Tigers teams were already out of contention by July. But I don't think I've ever seen. This is a team that was 21. They were 21 games back in 2019, and they finished getting the wild card. You're already 30 games back before the All-Star break. That, Chris, I have to see if that's some sort of that's second division 60s crap right there. That's historically bad. They're 25-63, and they are already their run differential. They've given up 491 runs.
Yeah, I did not see them being so bad this year. I guess I didn't, I didn't do a deep dive into their team, but I thought they would be, bad, but not the worst team in baseball by some margin. So this is just, it feels like one of those things that just has snowballed on them, and they're kind of leaning into it now.
And you want to guess the highest WAR on the team? Just take a guess.
What the number is, or who the player is?
You know what? I want you to, I should actually want you to guess the number. The player you probably will figure out, but
take a guess.
I don't know if Ketel Marte is still doing there, or if he's played much. Maybe Carson Kelly.
Escobar.
Eduardo Escobar. I don't know. 1.2.
Ooh, you're close. 1.7.
1.7. Well, that's pretty good.
Yeah, no, so I'm saying that's a good call there, Chris. You were really close there.
I'm looking here. The 2003 Tigers. Let's see. At the All-Star break, were 26 games under 500, or 26 games behind first place. So,
congratulations.
Yeah,
congratulations. You know what, Chris? That deserves this. 2003, the Diamondbacks were worse than 2003 Tigers at the same time. There you go.
Well, you can see the record. The Tigers' record. What's today? The 7th.
Yeah.
Tigers' record on the 7th was 21-65.
And they're 25 and 63.
So they're in the neighborhood.
You know what? I want Arizona to have this record so bad, Chris. So bad. You know why I want this record so bad, Chris? So Detroit's never mentioned again in an escalon of bad teams. But also, you just see the play on the field. They look like they just don't care anymore. They are totally 100%. We're coming in for the tank.
So they're on a 46-win pace, and it's interesting because a lot of people talk about the Isaiah Green as being the top player available next year, and he reminds me a lot of Justin Upton. He's actually bigger than Justin Upton. He's sort of a mix between Justin Upton and maybe Matt Kemp in his prime. So it'd be funny for them to get another number 1 overall pick, and he's kind of like Justin Upton again. But in any event,
Mike Hayes is not looking like the smartest guy in the room. I mean, like I said, we wait too long to make trade pieces like he did, and giving guys money that, again, some of the contracts they've signed too. I just was like,
yeah, I guess he's what is he? He's in year 4 or 5 now. 4 or 5. I mean, they had a really good draft a couple of years ago, but they had a billion picks. So
right.
I know you got to start doing stuff other than that. But of course, we've seen that here.
Yeah.
Now we got a handful of good questions.
Yes, we did.
There's one, Japers. I think we probably should ask this of I don't know if this is Japers, but JP. He asked a quick draft question: Colson Montgomery versus Alex Mooney. Now we probably should have asked Brian that, but Colson Montgomery is for those who know, he's a left-handed hitting shortstop from Indiana, I believe. He's also a multi-sport kid who's really climbing up draft boards. I've seen some people think he's going to go in the 20 to 25 range, because I think there's more potential pop there than with Mooney. Whereas Mooney, I think there's a better chance to stay at shortstop. And Mooney, of course, is the shortstop from Orchard Lake St. Mary's, he's just a well-rounded player. He's not necessarily have any true plus tools, maybe a plus runner, maybe plus arm strength, but probably more like 55. Whereas Montgomery, I think you can kind of dream on it and think maybe he's got a 60 grade pop down the line. But that's all I've got for that. Like I said, we probably should have asked Sakowski, who's probably seen them both 1,000 times. What do you got there? What is that? Scooby Snacks?
Yep.
Oh, nicely done.
Nicely done. That was Dan from Fangraphs, by the way.
Oh, Saborski did that?
Yeah, Saborski did that. Well played.
You gotta send him my K-Scoob.
Oh yeah, I gotta find it. You want? Yeah, I was gonna say I can send you his tweet so you can send him the case.
No, it's fine. K-Scoob. So yeah, we had two good questions, and there was one that I got last week that I had to expand on that might take a little while. But we'll start with this one. And this is from Chris, who goes by Al Tiger 1974, and this is very nice. He gives us a compliment first that I'll read. Hey, Roger. Again, just a great job with all the work you guys put in. As a diehard who lives further away, you guys help me keep me plugged in, and I really appreciate it. Well, yeah, absolutely. With Jackson Jobe, such a possibility as at three, is the risk mostly the high school right-handed starter profile, or is there more to it than that? And I think Brian basically answered that for us by saying it's not a Jackson Jobe problem; it's a right-handed pitcher problem.
Yeah, and I was going to say, Chris, one of the things that I wanted to ask you about this in terms of that right-handed high school thing. This goes back quite a bit, like decades, correct? I mean, even like when the Rangers picked that
David Clyde,
it goes back further. And in the Tigers, if you look at it historically speaking, they've done better with college players. I mean, in terms of college pitchers, they built the rotation of the '84 was Morris, who was at BMU or BYU. You had Petrie, who was, I think, was he a high school? I think
Petrie was a high schooler. I believe.
And that's a rare Dan Petrie.
But he was like a third rounder, I think.
Yeah, but nothing like in the first. Yeah, you're right. Like something like they had Pat Underwood. That was the kid they picked in 1970 or lefty, and I think it's 78, 79. And Pat Underwood was a kid that because his brother was a Major League Baseball player, he was like top 3 pick, and he never mounted anything. And there was, of course, there's a couple times in Tigers history where they've done that in the top 2 rounds, and it has not worked out well, except for Justin Thompson. But even then, you kind of even go, well, you only got one good season. You got a 7 more season out of him, but he wasn't really a quote unquote workhorse, so he didn't go multiple years with the Tigers. So,
yeah, I mean, one of the issues in the especially scary history is the right-handed pitchers who are touching 100 in high school or getting close to it.
Yeah, Brian mentioned that earlier, didn't he?
And yeah, it's the Colt Griffins and Riley Pints and who else? Tyler Kolek. And Jobe is getting dangerously close there. I think somebody's clocked him as high as 99. And it's just kind of the issue there is you see it with guys. They basically look like they've got major league stuff right now, but you still have to get them through however many years of the minor leagues and keep that stuff and not get injured and learn how to pitch better and all that stuff. Learn how to pitch every 5th day. And generally speaking, it's the guys who don't quite have that immediately in your face stuff right now that do better down the road. And we've often compared, Justin Verlander or Justin Steven Strasburg was not drafted out of high school, I don't think. There's just a lot of guys who get that growth spurt and get stronger and learn how to pitch better in college. And it just feels safer. You got those 3 years, you let them kind of take, clear the hurdles there and then make the pick. But it is a kind of a balancing act because you can get, like we said, you get one of those right-handed pitchers like a Dustin May. You get him in the 3rd or 4th round. You cultivate him for 3 years. He gets stronger, starts throwing 100-mile-an-hour sinkers. And you've got yourself, had he come out of college pitching like he did in his 3rd year of the minors or whatever, he would have been a top 5 pick. But you got him much later than that for much cheaper than that. So it's great scouting, great development. But it is, generally speaking, yeah. I'm trying to look at all the high school right-handers who flamed out, and it's kind of ugly. It's rare for, and even the great cases are somebody like Rick Porcello, who, despite pitching very well for a very long time, winning a Cy Young Award, still, I don't know if he was ever exactly what Tigers fans thought he would be. They kind of thought he'd be another Verlander, and instead he was just a very dependable ground ball pitcher, basically.
Yeah, he wasn't. He was the fundamental. He's the guy that's not super sexy. He's not going to give you the, must see Porcello or anything like that. But Porcello went out there and pitched 180 innings and gave you a solid starter. I mean, I don't know what else you want from somebody like that. And there's nothing wrong with not striking out guys. And he did enough to where he did strike out players when he had to.
Yeah, eventually, yeah.
Yeah.
He eventually figured it out. But again, he figured it out basically with Boston. So, yeah, so that's basically it. Jackson Jobe is, if there's any other concern, and that Kylie mentioned this to us, it's that he's not built like the traditional sort of ace that the Verlander sized ace, the 6'4", 6'5", 225 pounds. He's a little bit shorter and a little bit lighter than that. But as Kylie McDaniel told us yesterday, teams are kind of into that now. Not necessarily the small and slight guys, but guys who are a little bit shorter because of the angle that their pitches come in now. So.
Yeah, and the more I think about it too, the more when you see about Brady House, and I feel comfortable with Tigers picking him over Jobe, because I mean I went with it on the mock draft because based off that if the Tigers are going to pick a pitcher and they're going to develop it, because based off what they're doing with Chris Fetter, that was the best player that was available at the board when we did that originally. But I mean, right now I've been teetering back and forth between what I've been reading. But I think this: if they address the pitching in the later rounds, then I'm cool house.
And so I think this is something that I think we've touched on this. If not, now's a good time to break it out, or for the first time, or again. Is I wonder, it just pitching in general, we might see kind of a seismic shift in the way teams approach the draft overall. And that kind of goes to one of our next questions. But basically the idea, like we've seen in football, running backs generally don't go in the top 10, sometimes not even in the first round anymore because the game has changed. In basketball, your back-to-the-back big man doesn't exist anymore. You have to be a stretch five, basically. So the game changes, and pitching development has gotten so good. And guys are getting 3-4 miles an hour of velocity, gaining a foot of break on their breaking balls now. You can, and it's extended down to the minors or to the college level. So some of those guys are already making those adjustments. But it feels like you can get impact arms much later in the draft now if you know what you're looking for and know how to develop it right. Whereas it's hitting development is not nearly that advanced, and so it wouldn't shock me if you just see teams start shying away from all pitching in the top 10, just because, hey, we think we can get somebody later. But I guess we'll see how it plays out.
Yeah, especially with a team like Cleveland that's developed later round talent. Same thing when you mentioned the Dodgers earlier. So
yeah, Shane Bieber was not Shane Bieber when he was drafted. There's a reason he was drafted in a 4th round, 5th round, something like that. Yeah. And Cleveland took what he did well, which is throw strikes all the time, and it gave him better stuff. And he obviously put in a ton of work, but that's what you see now in baseball, and that's why I think you could probably get away with skipping pitching up top.
All right, what's the next question for us?
So this was the one that Nick Spillane sent us. That was really good.
Thanks for the question, Nick.
Yeah, I know y'all have discussed it being easier to hit on position players at the top of the draft than arms. I don't know when we discussed that. 2 seconds ago? Yes, that's right. Yep. However, given that high-end pitching is so thin in free agency these days, is there an argument to take the best arm available and then target position players in free agency for the Tigers? So that is an interesting counter to what I was just talking about. I don't know. Did you have any particular thoughts on that, Raj?
In terms of taking an arm in the draft, you said, or was it?
Yeah, so instead of because it's harder to find high-end pitching in free agency.
Yeah, I would go. I like Nick's question because I think that's the way it should. Like Tampa Bay does that. Tampa Bay will literally go, you're trading 29, 30. We're going to trade you. I mean, look at what's going on with Blake Snell right now in San Diego. He's out. I mean, they traded him at peak value, and they traded him. I think what you should do, if the Tigers, the problem is right now we don't know. Again, we don't truly know if Chris Ilitch is going to spend or not. I mean, he says he's going to, but again, it's all until actual proof happens. But if I'm the Tigers right now, you have Chris Fetter, you also have Dan Hubbs. They've been able, and right all along the line, Chris, we've seen this in the minor leagues. They've been able to, with the low round draft picks, guys who are serviceable. Bo Brisky might not be a household name. Sitting with Brandon White, the guys might be household names, but they're serviceable. So if they have a system in place and they're able to draft that and get a couple guys who can come up at least into either be org guys or even come up and maybe be a fit for starter or something out of the bullpen, I think that's the way to go. I think if you can get, then Tigers want Carlos Correa. Tiger fans rather want Carlos Correa. That'd be nice. But I think developing pitching eternally, having a system in place, drafting pitching, then getting your occasional signing a positional player, I think that's the way to go about it. That's just me, though.
Yeah, I mean, I think pitching in general is just dangerous. I mean, I think I understand Tigers fans being wary of going after free agent pitchers after what happened with Jordan Zimmerman. Right. That just was a spectacular failure. And I don't know how many other not necessarily big signings, but how many other extensions. They signed Anibal Sanchez to an extension that worked out okay for a while, and then that ended up being kind of a disaster. He found some more life later. The Verlander one was fine. I mean, he got hurt and then wasn't, but then they turned around and traded him. Nate Robertson, Dontrell Willis, like all the extensions to pitchers that I could think of didn't really work out so great. I think you just have to keep getting pitching anywhere you can, and maybe you can get some under the radar starters who you go find a Doug Fister or somebody like that you think is underutilized. But I think you have to draft pitching, and you have to sign pitching if you want to compete. That's just the way it is. Like you said, Roger, you have to replenish at all times. Yeah. And I like the idea of them signing bats. I do. And I think at this point there's still the thought that the Tigers farm system is light on bats. And it is, I guess, I mean, they've got 3 really good looking hitters coming up, and they've got Baddoo in the majors now, but it's also really light on pitching too. So it's not a great farm system anymore now that a bunch of these guys have graduated. So I guess a bunch of them. Who's graduated? Mize, Skubal, and Paredes. And Paredes, who knows if Paredes is part of the future at all? He's not hitting for any sort of power consistently, and I don't know what you do with that. But so I don't know. I mean, it is an interesting theory, and if most teams start doing what I was saying, which is draft hitters up top and let find pitchers later, then maybe you can zag and get some pitching that falls to you. Maybe next year when the Tigers aren't picking top 5, maybe they'll pick more like 12, 15. So maybe that's the time to do it.
No, and the one thing that I think I contribute to right now about having the ability to draft pitching right now, like this will be the first time we actually see this new regime, quote unquote, with hubs and the new people they have in place actually draft pitching, Chris. I mean, considering that in 2019, they drafted maybe 1 pitcher, 2 pitchers tops.
2019, they took 2 pitchers in the top 10. They took Zach Hess and Austin Bergner, and they were both relievers. 2018, like you mentioned, they took Mize, Hugh Smith, and Tarek Skubal, I think, in the top 10.
And we have no idea what Hugh Smith even looks like.
Yeah, Hugh Smith is probably not going to work out. So, yeah, they've got they found some interesting arms later, but mostly they're probably org guys or relievers. So, I don't know. Maybe they just need to do a better job of developing these guys into starters, and maybe we'll start seeing that coming. But I don't know. I expect them to get some college pitching in this draft. 2, 3, maybe 4 arms in the top 10. But we'll see. Maybe they'll continue going bats.
I think, if they went all bats, then it'd be just kind of like, then who are you going to bring in? Unless they're, again, even the free agent market for pitching next year is so thin. And, something else I just thought about this too, Chris. Matt Moore, you have Tyson Ross, you have the Ivan Nova. Yeah, Julio Teheran. It doesn't matter. Even with the 1-year deals the Tigers are striking out at. And don't tell me that I'm an idiot about it, but look, even since the Mike Pelfrey signing, it's been every 1-year, 2-year deal has been a disaster. So I think I know why the Tigers had to develop pitching from afar, Chris, because look, Teheran, you're taking a risk because he was coming off injury. And he had a pretty good season last year. Taijuan Walker was out there, but you're like, no, we're not spend that kind of money. Sorry. You need to spend money if you're going to get good pitching, though.
Yeah, and even if you do, it's not necessarily a guarantee. Like you said, Mike Fiers is the only one who mildly worked out, and they traded him for Logan Shore and Nolan Blackwood. So, hooray!
Yeah, they're all fire kid. At this point, they're just things you put in the fire. It's been, I don't know. Even like I said, the Drew Hutchinson ideas comes from total 100% desperation because they don't. The teams are going to the indie leagues right now to find pitching. I think the Marlins and Cubs were among teams that were looking for that. So there you go.
Yeah.
So,
all right, and we have one final question, and this, like I said, this came to me earlier in the week, and it was it came to I think he asked me, you, and Scott Bentley. It was from Brian Morrissey. He said, "Is there a stat that adds stolen bases into slugging percentage? So if a guy adds a base via a steal, his single would be weighted like a double. Would love to see good base running show up in a stat like OPS." And I said, I responded. I said the short answer is no, and then I made it for him. It's not that hard, you just take some numbers from Fangraphs and add stolen bases and subtract caught stealing. And Baddoo was, I think, tied for 3rd in baseball this year in our invented stat of slugging percentage added. But I said, I'll explain more if you want me to, and he said he did. So here we go, and this is going to be a little bit complex, and we're going to go back through the history of mankind here. But mostly just we got to talk about the history of what we call advanced stats now, I guess, the stats that we talk about all the time. We reference, WRC plus and things like that. So, and I like this question because I I wondered the same thing not that long ago, sometime in the last decade, maybe as little as 5 years ago, maybe more like 10. But I thought, I've always loved power speed guys. We talked about this before. We love Eric Davis and Ricky Henderson and Darryl Strawberry and Jose Canseco going 40-40. That was like the coolest thing ever when I was 8. And so I've always liked that. And it wouldn't surprise me if there was kind of a short-lived stat at one point that added stolen bases into slugging. But now I got to explain why that didn't last. So basically the whole advanced stats movement began when a small group of people, and typically people credit Bill James for the popularizing, or at least
the Godfather.
They started pointing out that a lot of the popular stats we use in baseball don't actually tell us what we want them to. So, and the two big examples are pitcher wins and RBIs. Well, what we want to know what a pitcher did to help his team win when he's pitching. And with hitters, we want to know if they help their team score runs. And those are, worthy goals, but the pitcher win, we know, is a terrible stat for that. You mentioned it earlier. The guy threw one pitch, got kicked out of the game and still lost. And you can have a pitcher throw 5 innings, give up 9 runs and win. So the pitcher win obviously is not a good indicator of how well a guy pitched. And RBIs don't tell you how well a guy helped his team score. They tell you, when there were men on base, he was able to knock them in, which is, some people think it's a skill. I think Jim Leland still believes it's a skill. And there's certain players who do seem to have a knack for racking up RBIs, but you can't do that if you don't have anybody on base. It's not a great stat for overall offensive production. So basically, I think Bill James took it back down to the very simple point of what do we care about for baseball, and what you care about is what do you do to help your team score runs on offense and help your team prevent runs or prevent runs for the other team. That's the general idea behind the stat Brian mentioned, OPS. That the idea there is that you're going to add a player's on-base percentage and slugging and get a better idea of what kind of offensive threat he is. And that's a good stat. It's better than batting average and RBI, certainly, but it's not complete. There are certain problems with it. For example, it treats on-base percentage. It treats a point of on-base percentage as the same as a point of slugging. And stats show that a point of on-base percentage is actually like 1.8 times more valuable than slugging percentage. So Bill James ended up creating a stat called runs created to account for a batter's total offensive performance. I don't know when he did this. It was years and years ago. And it basically just used hits, walks, and total bases at the beginning, which makes sense. If you want to find a player's offensive production, that's essentially OPS, right? But then it progressively got more complex as you started to figure out, like, hey, well, these other things are involved too, including hit by pitch, stolen base, caught stealing, grounded double play, sacrifice fly, sacrifice hits, and so on. And then in 2002, he updated it again to offer more specific values for each event. A double isn't like Brian mentioned, a double isn't necessarily worth twice as much as a single, and that's when Tom Tango, who is now the head kind of data scientist for StatCast, he invented, I don't know if he invented, but he's credited with creating weighted on base average, which, applies the proper value to each event. A double is worth this many runs, or, is actually worth this, and a triple is worth this, and so forth and so on. And then the weight makes it look like traditional on-base average, just so people have something to compare it to, basically. And you can use that to translate to weighted runs created, and then measured against the league to get weighted runs created plus, which we talk about all the time, right?
Right.
How a guy's total offensive performance compares to the rest of the league. So yeah, again, all that to get to this. For a while, Fangraphs did factor in steals and caught stealing and weighted on base average. But they stripped it out later into a separate base running category. And they did it because of what we talked about earlier. You're not getting a full accounting for what the guy's doing with his base running. So why do we want to add steals to slugging percentage? Because we like the idea of a guy adding value with his legs. And steals are the most prominent example of that, but they're not the only example of that, right? So you have to also factor in the context. Like stealing third with 1 out is probably more valuable than stealing third with 2 outs, just because you're more likely to, you can get a sacrifice fly or just a weak ground ball and score a run. But also, you have to factor in the idea that getting a caught stealing isn't just a minus a base, the way that a stolen base would be adding a base to a slugging. Caught stealing takes away a base and adds another out, which is much more detrimental than just taking away. It's you're removing one of your 27 outs. That's a big deal. And then there are other factors like advancing from first to third, from second to home, from first to home, avoiding double plays, and getting thrown out on the bases. I remember it seemed like Ian Kinsler was always getting thrown out for some reason, getting thrown out at home or third or whatever. That all factors into your base running. And so now Fangraphs and Baseball Reference, they have a separate base running skill, basically a base running tally that then you get the offense that has nothing to do with base running. You get the defense, and then you add the base running. And so at Fangraphs, it's called BSR. And Akil Baddoo ranks 38th in baseball this year in BSR at 1.8, meaning he's provided 1.8 runs basically with his base running alone.
It's pretty impressive.
Yeah, and Fernando Tatis leads baseball at 5.6, but Baddoo is tops on the Tigers. So, that's a long, complicated answer to why such a stat doesn't exist. It's basically because it's not complex enough.
I was going to say, Chris, I was trying to follow. I was starting to write it down and try to follow along, but I was kind of like going, all right. Am I getting this right? There's a lot of moving parts to it. And
yeah, you don't necessarily need I apologize for going all the way into that, but it's basically the idea is what you want to know out of a guy slugging plus stolen bases is how well his speed is helping him get extra bases and help the team score. And so when you want to know that, you have to factor in everything else that his running does, or you're not getting the most accurate assessment of his speed. So, yeah, sorry, but I felt like it was worthy explaining, and I appreciate the question because it is kind of interesting to me. And as I said, I love the power and speed, and I really like Akil Baddoo, and he's got power and speed. We haven't seen the power as much lately, but I'm fine with that if he's going to be hitting 270, 280 and walking 12% of the time.
Yeah. Hey, if he's leading off and doing well. By the way, Brad Miller has hit 3 home runs tonight in the Phillies Cubs game. He just he hit one off the scoreboard at Wrigley Field just now.
Oof.
So
and how are the Cubs? The Cubs are down 8-0, as I said in my bad. Not so good. And of course, the Tigers are down 5-3. It sounds like it got kind of ugly there in the 7th inning. Skubal gave up that home run, and then there's some poor defense, and then a wild pitch, and it also feels like the Tigers have missed a lot of opportunities today. I'm gonna check. 1 for 5 with runners in scoring position, down to their final 3 outs.
Yeah, but you know what though? We're not the Cubs.
Hey, Chicago, what do you say? The Cubs are gonna win today.
All right, on that note.
No, they are not.
No.
Go Cubs, go!
Go Cubs, whoa!
Oh, geez.
Chicago, what do you say? The Cubs are gonna win today.
Nope.
Go!
Go Cubs, whoa! All right, enough of that nonsense. All right, thanks so much for listening to Tigers SRD at MotorCityBengals.com. And hopefully Uper will be back next week. He's back in travel. But don't forget to check out our show on Sunday. Back here on YouTube at 7 o'clock, we'll be live streaming the entire draft. The first round of the draft with the Tigers pick. We'll have Trevor Huth from Bless You Boys and Prospects Live with us. We're also going to have Justin Leda, who works for an Indians Prospects site as well, and he's also a friend of ours from Prospects Live. We have Gabrielle Starr, who is the new editor-in-chief over for Fanside. She writes for the Phillies Fanside site, and she's also from Boston, so she's familiar with the whole Red Sox as well. Casey Bogasaw, old friend of the show, we haven't had him on in a while. Hopefully he'll be joining us. And, of course, Scott Bentley from Locked On Tigers is joining us as well. So looking forward to talking to Bentley. He's been pumped about the draft. He likes Henry Davis, so we'll definitely get his input on that, and looking forward to it. So Sunday night at 7 o'clock, and then the Tigers hang out during the game, during the Futures game. We're going to be hanging out in Chris's basement, watching baseball pretty much for 7-8 hours, something like that. So fun-filled Sunday, Chris.
Yeah. No, I'm looking forward to it. It's always kind of like I used to say that the Futures game was kind of like my Christmas and the draft was like my Christmas. So now this is 2 Christmases in one, which is it's like, I guess, being the kid of a divorced couple. There you go. So there you go.
On that note, well, thanks so much for watching. Or if you're watching on YouTube, great. If you want, thanks for listening. We'll see you next time.
Yeah, nobody was watching at that point. So
no. You know what, Chris? We had one watch until the end, and we had 5.